Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Warren Distinguished Lecture Series. And today we're having a career panel joined by these four amazing individuals. And I'm Claire Matrisciano. I'm a senior here at the U in water resources. So I'll be graduating in the spring. But to start, we'll go ahead and go through down the panel to have a little introduction, your name, where you're working, your company, and then your position, and a little bit on your educational background.
All right, so I'm Jackie Nowak. Currently, I'm working at SRF Consulting Group here locally in the Twin Cities. I am a transit data analyst and forecaster. So basically what that means is I work on a lot of different types of transit corridor projects, forecasting their ridership in pursuit of federal funding, generally speaking. My educational background, I graduated from this department in 2016 with my undergraduate degree, and then again, I guess technically in 2021 with my master's degree. And I also have a degree or a master of urban and regional planning that I got from the Humphrey School. So I did a dual degree program. So it's good to be back and see everyone.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shahram Missaghi. I work for City of Minneapolis. Just a quick overview, I guess, with my education. I'm a graduate from the St. Anthony Falls Laboratory in limnology. It was a great experience. I encourage everyone to explore that. So I work for City of Minneapolis as Water Resources Regulatory Coordinator. I've been with the city for 3 years, and my work primarily focuses on what to do with runoff and how do we make sure what flows downstream is a clean water and how it minimizes impact on our water resources. And happy to be here.
Hey, I'm Ling. I am an environmental engineer with Barr Engineering based here in Minneapolis. And my work is primarily in water, wastewater treatment, and water quality. I got my bachelor's here from this department in 2008, and I would have stayed, but everyone said that I should get some more educational experiences, so I got a PhD from the University of Colorado after that, and then came back to Barr. My work centers around kind of linking the basic science of chemistry, microbiology, and water quality to what we can do about it in terms of designing engineered solutions for making cleaner water, making more water, and protecting our water resources.
Hi, my name's Tom Lorentz. I'm with IDOM. I'm the president of North American operations for IDOM. IDOM is a consulting firm based with our headquarters in Spain, but we have 45 offices around the world. I am a graduate of the department. I did my undergrad and master's degree here. I graduated my master's in 1992. I'm a structural engineer by discipline, and I'm also a graduate of the Carlson School as well.
Yeah, thank you. And then to kind of go in deeper on your background, I'm curious to hear about some of the highlights in your career that have led you to be where you are today.
I'll start since I'm holding the microphone. Well, I started my career at AEC Engineering, which became a part of IDOM. And so I've been with the firm now for 32 years. So I started right after graduate school, and I started as a design engineer and worked on projects. Most of my experience is working on projects in the industrial or power sector. So things like manufacturing, oil and gas, or power generation. And I've worked on projects all over North America, and started as a started designing small parts of projects, then you design a little bit bigger projects, and then maybe take the lead on a disciplined lead on a project or manage a project. And so that was the kind of the trajectory of my career. And because I really enjoy the business side of consulting as well, I got into that aspect of going out and talking to customers, procuring work, proposing work, procuring work, the business development aspect, and I'm still really tied to the technical part as well. That's one of the reasons why I love our firm, is because we're still engaged even in the administrative level or managerial level. We still get involved in projects, and I love that. That's why I wanted to become an engineer.
All right, so my path to get here, as I mentioned, I did a PhD with the University of Colorado. I did do an internship with Barr Engineering before I left for the PhD, so I had some connections there. I also did an internship with the city of Bloomington, as well as a research experience here in the department. So kind of the wide array of things. When I went to do my PhD, I think I knew from the start that I didn't necessarily want to be an academic, so I did PhD work, and then I was trying to think of where I would want to go, whether it be consulting or public works. But I ended up going back to Barr because I really enjoyed the experience there as an intern. Working at Barr, I started kind of being the junior engineer for a more senior environmental engineer that was leading a lot of our complex wastewater projects. And he ended up resigning about 3 years into my tenure there, and I became the senior engineer on complex wastewater projects. And so there was a lot of learning fast, having to step up into big shoes that I didn't feel comfortable in. But you kind of fake it until you make it, and get input from others and make sure that stuff is safe and okay. But you're capable. You kind of learn that you're capable of a lot more than you might think you are.
All right, thanks. How I got here. I guess after I had graduated, I started working as part of in lake management. And when I was going to school, we had this this phrase that said, your lake is a reflection of your watershed. So once I was out working, we were focusing on the watershed, what are the things we can do in the watershed, the area that drains into the lake, and what are some practices we can do. So I spent doing that for about 10 years. And I said, this is not really working. So there's got to be something more than that. And that's how I was fortunate to get involved with St. Anthony Falls Laboratory, where I started doing some water quality modeling. And that's where I learned about climate change, the impacts of the climate change, and what we thought was what used to be kind of understood methods were not really working anymore, because we were dealing with climate change. Our frame of reference was changing, and modeling helped me to see that, and I was really excited about it. But as I was doing modeling, then I realized, okay, doing the modeling, the physics was cool. I could do the temperature, no problem. Well, I shouldn't say no problem, but doable. And chemistry was challenging, but it was fun. But biology, gosh, I could not figure out how to predict algae. So then I spent another 10 years working around understanding where I was fortunate again to work with Professor Hanzo's laboratory and trying to understand where does algae grow within the water column? Is it on the top? Is it on the bottom? And how does it like to be where it is? And that really helped me just to have lots of fun. And I think in my own way, maybe I've contributed a little bit in the field. So that's what I focus on right now. Right now, we're also doing some research with St. Anthony Falls Laboratory, again, around algae and what's the impact on all the ponds that you may see throughout the developments. They're called water quality ponds. Are they just the little incubators for algae? Are they pushing algae down to our lakes? And what are some of the health concerns with the algae? So those are the things that it's really fun to talk about.
All right, so admittedly, my career has been shorter than I think the rest of the panelists. I've, it's only been about 4 years since I finished my coursework, but I can say that, as an undergraduate student, I did an internship with MnDOT in traffic signal operations. So that really got me on the path towards transportation, where I still am today. But through the course of some research experience and another internship with Metro Transit, that's how I found my way into the transit field. So when I was a senior here in the department, I was, trying to figure out what I was going to do. So I decided to kind of do something crazy and do a dual master's program and sign myself up for a bunch more coursework, which was a lot, but I think it really opened up some doors in terms of what I do now, which is a pretty specialized ridership forecasting, and that's how I actually found my job with SRF. We're pretty rare for a mid-sized firm that we actually have such a practice. That's pretty uncommon. But I was fortunate enough to work under my original boss, whose name was Steve Wilson, in his last couple of years before retirement. And so similar to Ali's story, I found myself working for this really impressive person who then retired and then needed someone to kind of step into their shoes. And again, feeling a little bit nervous about this level of responsibility and visibility, certainly. But it's been a really rewarding experience to try and rise up and fill those shoes. So that's kind of where I got to where I am today.
Yeah, you mentioned Ali and Jackie moving into these roles that may be pretty nerve-wracking to do. And if the other panelists have advice on if someone see themselves in that same spot, how do they proceed and kind of move past if they are feeling maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome with that?
I guess I can start. It's a tough question, and I would say that imposter syndrome is something that I deal with every day. But I think it's really important to recognize when you have a team that backs you. So in my original role, I was on one team, and then I moved to another group in the company that I felt was more supportive of my goals. So I would say always be looking out for who are your allies, and make sure that they do have your back. And if you're going into a situation where you're nervous that you are qualified or whatever, and you don't feel like people have your back, then it's probably time for a move. But if you do find those allies that support you, definitely stick with them and lean into that support.
Okay, I guess I brought this topic up. I think part of it is having those allies and having people who can kind of smirk test thing, and you can say, check in with them and say, I'm going to do this thing, here's what I'm thinking, and kind of get their feedback on it. I think part of it is that you can't be afraid to fail. You have a safety net there, people will check your work, you can ask people, but if you don't know what to do, which is me 50% of the time at work, you need to try something. You say, okay, here's what I know. I'm going to ask a lot of questions and get as much information about the system as I can, and then we're going to try this. Okay, that might not work. Try something new. That might not work. I guess, in my opinion, a PhD is basically 4 years of practice at that, because most things you do don't work. But I think, even without getting a PhD, I think people can build those skills by practicing and working with others to try something, not in a place where it's okay to fail. And you have a trust with someone who's maybe more senior and can help support you as you learn stuff and as you figure stuff out. As you get more senior in your career, maybe that's a peer that you're bouncing stuff off as well. But a lot of it is just trying, making sure you've got a support network and not being afraid.
I think building on the idea of finding a network that you trust, and the converse side of that is being able to be trusted. So as you start out in your career, I would encourage everyone to don't minimize the importance of building a brand, or building a trusting relationship, and that means that you have to do what you say you're going to do. You have to be clear when you can do something or don't know how to do something. Be clear about that. So it's the trust relationship goes both ways. You have to establish that, and it's really important to get that established right away in your career. And if you establish yourself as somebody that can be trusted, good things happen, because you just build on that. And that doesn't mean being perfect. That absolutely doesn't mean perfect. It's being counted on to be a good communicator and clear when you don't know, and talk about things that you don't know.
And so then kind of moving away from things that might be challenging, what's something that really excites you in your field today that, really is bringing you to work every day?
I guess what motivates me to go to work is really the belief that my job makes somebody else's life better. It really comes down to what we do impacts people's lives, and when you see that, it's a great satisfaction. It could be adding value to a house by saving the lake. It could be saving the house from flooding. It could be just making a lake or a pond enjoyable, so people can walk around it and they can actually enjoy it. Maybe they see a butterfly. Maybe they just clean water. And I think that is what motivates me, at least, to how you can improve someone's life.
I think what motivates me most right now is helping my more junior staff learn and build their skills as environmental engineers. They're the future of the field, and they're going to make big changes. And I did the math the other day, but I think I spend about half of my time actively in meetings with junior engineers, mentoring them on projects. And I think it's a lot of time. But it's really important, and I enjoy doing it. And when I see them learn how to do things, learn how to not be afraid and try stuff and figure things out on their own, come up with solutions, that's really inspiring to me. One of my favorite things is if I have an idea and a junior engineer's like, that doesn't make any sense, and here's why. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, it doesn't make any sense. Let's do what you thought. So I'm really inspired by the other people I work with right now.
I agree. Being able to see the new employees and being able to mentor them and see them develop, and people that I've been in my position long enough that I've seen people that have come through our ranks internally and taken on bigger and bigger positions of responsibility, and that's hugely gratifying.
I don't know that I have a ton to add. Definitely the idea of seeing the improvements that I'm helping to implement in people's lives is a big part of it for sure, though.
Yeah, and you were speaking on junior engineers. So what advice do you have on those that are currently job seeking, either for a full-time position after graduation or for an internship?
I'll take this one first. Been fortunate to have gone through the process of working on hiring some people recently, and I think that the advice that I really wanted to give all of them was to, number one, remember your value. There's something that you will bring to the table, and you need to figure out what that is and convince people that that is the case. And also, just don't be afraid to advocate for yourself and dig deeper into what it is that and you want to bring to a company.
Well said. I guess don't look for a job that you can fit into it, because what would be the point of that? That's no fun. Create the position. As you said, look at what you have, what values you have, what skills you have, and really look for a space that you can create that position for yourself. And you can shine what you have specialized in and just rely on what you know.
Yeah, I agree with both of those points. The other thing I'd want to emphasize is practice your communication skills. Most of us didn't go to engineering school because we like to write or speak publicly, but the work we do has such a bigger impact if you can communicate it effectively. So when you're in a job, you're going to need to be able to communicate effectively with your team members. You're going to need to be able to communicate effectively with people you're working for, with stakeholders, with the public. And if you can excel at that, you're going to make a much bigger difference in the world.
Think about the things that are important to you from a cultural standpoint, that make you feel good, and try and find a position or a company that their culture matches the things that you value. I think that's a huge component of being satisfied at work. You have to be aligned in your what's important.
And as these students are looking for their positions, some of you have experience solely in private, solely in public, or a little bit in between. So what calls you to be in the private sector, public sector, and what would you recommend if someone's interest, where they would fall into?
I'll start because I'm still holding the microphone. I'm in the private sector. Almost all of our work from our firm in North America is in the private sector, as I said, in heavy industry. And that's still is one of the reasons why I love my job, because I'm fascinated by the different companies that we work with, how things get made. I've worked on everything from projects that make diaper tape, to mining, to telescopes, and that variety really excites me. And I like to understand how different things are produced, and being able to work in those kinds of facilities, and the design of those kinds of facilities gives you some insight into that, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I'd echo that. So I'm in private industry as well, in consulting. I haven't really spent much time in public, so it's a little bit hard to speak on that. But understand your strengths and what you're most excited about. I love to learn, and so being in consulting, where every project I do is something new, I learn something new just about every day. And I'm sure there's places in the public where you can do that as well. But that's what I like about my company.
I guess I would put the question back to the person and say, what is conducive to your goals, and what do you want to achieve? Again, rather than trying to see where you can fit, ask the question, where do you want to be? And if government helps you, or research, or academia, then you go for that. Or if private industry offers you the opportunity to get your goals, then do that. I guess I will put the focus back on which one is more conducive to your plans.
So I did my internships exclusively in public sector, and now, of course, work in private sector. And I think the main difference that I've noted is that in the private sector, we're actively pursuing work and projects to work on. And so, as you advance your career, again, knowing what your goals are, in the private sector, you have the ability to sort of tailor the projects that you're working on towards like the things that you're interested in. Or, sometimes you'll find that some clients are easier to work with than others, and you'll try to work more with the easier ones and maybe less with the more challenging ones. Obviously, there are limitations, but it does provide you some flexibility in who you're working with and what you're working on. What I did enjoy when I was in the public sector was the ability to really dig into kind of more of the policy and the decision making, and kind of be present at the table. I mean, I was an intern, so there was a limit to that, but to kind of see how decisions get made, and just better understand the landscape of our industry and how things go. So I think that there's a lot of value in both, but yeah, it's really, what are your goals and what are you interested in?
You four are within different disciplines of civil engineering. How important is a master's degree or further education in those fields? And do you think perhaps maybe that differs if you're pursuing a position in the public or private sector?
I guess what I would start was that I would not have the position that I have today if I had not gotten a master's degree. It kind of varies in transportation. I know a lot of, transportation designers or engineers who just have a bachelor's degree, and that is more than sufficient for their needs. But in my more specialized role, the master's degree was pretty critical. And I would say the same would be true if I was working in public or private sector.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it depends a lot on what type of work you like to do. If you like kind of the more exploratory, researchy type of stuff, I think there's a benefit to getting a master's or a PhD. If you're into more of the, the design, kind of doing similar projects and being really good at certain things, I think, you might be fine with a bachelor's. I work with a lot of people with who don't have graduate degrees that are very, very effective at their job, and even at jobs similar to mine. I think a lot of it kind of depends on what you want to do, and also on your kind of initial temperament. I will say that if I had not gone to grad school, I don't think I would be nearly as good at the job that I do right now.
On the structural side, in the consulting world, master's degree definitely helps. My specialty is non-building structures, so I work on things that are not, we don't have go-bys, we don't have typically unique projects. And so while there's some things that are common, you have to go back to first principles quite often, and having the extra academic start is a big help. Now, it's not an absolute, but it does help. But again, I think it really depends on the individual. I work with people that have a bachelor's degree and are completely effective. We have people at the PhD level that are effective, or we've had people at the PhD level that were less effective. So it really is attitude and your approach also on continuous learning. There's so much learning that happens once you get onto the job that's your approach to lifelong learning is really important.
On the topic of education, what is something you wish that you knew while you're in school that, like, you know now, but you wish you knew then?
I am not shy to confess what I should know more. So I guess if I were going back to school, I would do 2 areas I would focus on: English and physics. I think, as you mentioned, it's English, literature, poetry. How do we communicate? How do we share our stories? I remember I used to always trying to impress folks. I would write 50-page reports, as many big terms as possible. I had to show that I knew the stuff. Nobody looked at it for nanosecond. I mean, they just put it aside. Then about couple of decades ago, a friend of mine, I was investigating how I can improve it, and I came upon a website called one-pagers. I realized, wow, in the industry, folks use one-pagers. That means what you know, you put it on one page, maybe double-sided. So I focused on that, and then later on I learned that someone told me at the White House, you get like 3 minutes or 10 minutes to share your idea, and you get 3 slides, and those slides can have more than 10 words or 3 pictures. And that really pressed me to tell my story in as quickly as possible. And that's where I learned I need communication in English. Nowadays, I try to have one page on everything I do. It drives my team crazy, but we always talk about, do you have a one-pager? It's your business plan and everything else, but can you state it in an effective way that you can communicate? So I would go back and study English over and over. It's my second language as well, so maybe I have more incentive to study it. The other thing is physics. I cannot figure out how to do something and not have to what called it the first principle, which is physics. Everything comes down to math too. I guess math speaks the if I knew physics, I could do a lot more modeling. If I knew physics, I could have better understand structures. So really, I would go back and study more physics courses, advanced physics courses, with good math and more English and literature. Sorry, I jumped on that, but that's what I really get. That's what I always share with folks. Those 2 are at least mine to go to.
I think I would echo the ability to communicate technical content, particularly to non-technical audiences, especially in the transportation field. We interact a lot with policymakers. And so you go through these meeting cycles where the first meeting will be with your technical management team, then you'll go to a slightly less technical. And then when you get to the policymaker, the presentation that you're bringing shrinks dramatically. You go from 10 slides down to maybe 3. And you really have to be able to distill information down to a level that communicates why it's important and why people should care, and to recommend, what decision should be made from it. So I can't emphasize the technical communication enough.
Okay, I was going to steal just to show off one new thing. Sorry. One of the latest thing we're doing is making videos. Everything is happening in video. So now we spent 3 years doing a project. Now we put it together in a 2.5-minute video. Again, hoping to get to the decision makers who are interested in the story and the reason behind it and the consequences, and how can I effectively communicate that in 2.5 minutes. Now I'll give up my time.
I guess my recommendation would be to be curious and ask a lot of questions. When I was an undergrad, I frankly thought that people who asked questions in class were doing so because they didn't know what they were doing, but really they were probably just curious about what was going on. And so I didn't used to ask very many questions, and I've worked with a lot of people who are very good at asking questions and realizing that if you jump to conclusions and you think that you know the whole situation right away, you're probably going to do a bad job at that project. So whenever you start something, really ask questions, try to understand what everyone needs, what the limitations are, what needs to be done here, and get that all sorted out before you start jumping to solutions and trying to figure out what it is you're going to do.
Absolutely. The art of listening and asking questions, Ali said it really well. I would agree. That's a key aspect. If I had to do it over, I would spend more time practicing that early.
Was there something that you were involved in during your time at university that you absolutely loved and would recommend to people that are students now?
Yes, I was captain of the concrete canoe team, and it's an experience that I really loved, and I would recommend it to anyone.
I guess I would suggest attend seminars. It is amazing the people who are on this campus and St. Paul campus who are just brilliant, amazing people. And you can go to a seminar and get such innovative new ideas. And you may forget some, but you may remember some. And it's amazing how those seminars are very helpful just to open the idea, like just see a different way.
My example is not very intellectual, but I was a member of the Ultimate Frisbee team here on campus, and I guess my takeaway here is to encourage you to have hobbies. Life is not work. If you work all the time and don't have any hobbies, you're unlikely to be a happy person. I mean, maybe you will be, but I would not be able to do that. So being on the Ultimate Frisbee team, I still play, I still have a community there, and it's just been a really meaningful part of my life since then.
I was associated with, in undergrad, I was associated with the ASCE student chapter, and after I got into practice, I retained that association with ASCE through my career, and it's been a great source of networking, and it's been enjoyable to me. So I encourage, looking for societies or professional associations is a great way to further your career.
Ellie, you mentioned having hobbies and that life isn't all work. So how do you balance your work and life, and how has that changed as you've moved throughout your career?
I like to say I don't have a work-life balance problem. I have a work-work balance problem. My firm lets people work a reduced base, so I typically work about 36 hours a week. And if I'm working 40 hours a week, it's a big week for me. I've got 2 small children at home. I have other hobbies, and I have, I pour myself into work when I'm working, and I sometimes struggle to make the time for all of the things I need to do at work. But I do prioritize doing other things outside of work because I like doing those things.
It is important to have a good work-life balance. It's a matter of prioritization, and it's a matter of planning, and then it's just discipline. So it's not always easy, and there's no perfect. I found that there's no perfect solution, but it's a continual process, but it is extremely important.
I would just add that it's really important to find a company and a team that aligns with your values. Certainly there's a lot of variation. I feel very fortunate to have found a team that really does prioritize, keeping your workload to 40 hours. Say my husband is also, he's a structural engineer, and he's worked for places that have not prioritized that. And, it really takes a toll on you. So while you might feel like you're getting ahead by working 50-hour weeks, eventually that probably will catch up with you. So finding the right team that aligns with the level that you want to commit is really important.
I better not answer that question. So 50 hours, I guess if you're doing research, 50 hours would be a breeze week. I guess I guess it well said. It just, maybe the only advice is if you enjoy your job, if you enjoy what you're doing, then it just makes it a lot easier. There are times maybe you have to go to public presentations or or maybe like I used to take my kids to school presentations or activities where I would be talking about environment. So it was blending both together, and they dressed as bear and gopher and different things while we were having environmental education. So maybe it sounds like I don't have a balance, but I guess if you enjoy what you're doing, it is what you do. You go on vacation, you take pictures of plants. That's just part of what you do.
I felt like a poser answering that question also.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, I was just being honest.
And with your jobs, how much field work do you experience with them?
Basically none, that's what I'd say.
Because in my field, everything we do is based on field work. You may not. It's unfortunate. Part of the environmental management, the more seniority, maybe that's not the case with others. The more seniority you get, the less you go out in the field. But you really got to force yourself. You're always out in the field. You got to force yourself. Maybe if it applies in your job, because everything we do has to do. What does it mean physically? What does it mean? How is that structure going to look like? How is it going to impact the universe? I mean, those are all the questions I think you can only gain to be out in the field. And if you've ever done a project, you can have the best design, but what drives it is field adjustment or field changes or change orders. All those things that you got to do out in the field. So I haven't figured out if you're sharing with that manufacturer, so I'm sorry.
I do not do a lot of field work. I learned fairly early on that I'm not very good at field work and don't enjoy it very much. Some people are in the field and the day just flies by. That's not me. I do try to get in the field when needed, but I don't do a lot of design or building of stuff. So it's not always, I don't usually have to go out there and figure out where this building is, where this pipe is, that kind of thing. I would agree that typically more junior staff get in the field more to help with stuff.
The first part of my career, I did a fair amount of work in the field, and I was fortunate I had a company that helped me get experience in different areas. That, for instance, I spent time in metal fabrication shops, steel fabrication shops. I spent time on construction sites, and giving that experience to understand how what you do on paper, how it translates into real life is really important. I can still remember the first design that I did, that I went out in the field and saw being erected. There was a angle support, and it was a stack, and there was an angle support. And the angle that I originally designed was something like a 6x6x1. Now, on paper, you can write 6x6x1. Doesn't seem, and it's what it was required. But when I got out in the field and I saw it, that is huge, and a person couldn't even lift the piece that I decided. It was understanding what that means, like physically, was a big revelation to me. And I still, whenever I look at somebody that designs a big angle, right now it brings me back to that first time that I observed that, and that was a big learning.
In preparation for the panel, we opened up a Google form where students could ask any of their questions. One of them that we received was specific to you, Ali. What is the most challenging part of being an environmental engineer? And after Ali's done, I'd like to open it up to everyone else to share what the most challenging parts of their jobs are as well.
I would say the most challenging part of my job as an environmental engineer is figuring out what to do that gives the biggest benefit to society. So I do a lot of water and wastewater treatment. So treating drinking water so that people's health risk when they drink it is lower, treating wastewater so that the surface waters are cleaner. There are a lot of different things we can do in that area, but we don't have money for all of them. the water wastewater industry has historically been very underfunded, along with most infrastructure areas. And so in terms of public funding, in terms of other funding that people can scrap together, it's a question of what sorts of projects provide the greatest benefit, whether that's a reduction in health risk, whether that's change in climate change, whether it's environmental justice types of concerns. I think it's hard to communicate that to people. It's hard to figure out what things to do. And both if you're working with a specific client that needs to do some stuff, or if you're working kind of more on a broader scale, trying to pick and choose the things that are most important.
So I work in the transit industry, and I would say the most challenging thing that we face is kind of the consistent need to defend our existence, which maybe is a little bit existential, but in a the kind of highly politicized world that we live in, the work that I do is really heavily influenced by policy, both at the state and federal levels. So if there's a rule change at the federal level with the changing of administrations, that sort of thing, that really can impact the work that we're doing. And also the funding sources that are available. And so we have to pivot our priorities and the projects that we pursue. So it's not so much in the technical or everyday work, but in the bigger picture, how do we continue to push for things that we really care about and want to work on in this kind of ever-changing landscape.
I guess what has been most challenging in my field, and both have worked in private and government and school, I would say competing for resources. As you mentioned, there's just not enough to do everything, and sometimes there's nothing to do there's nothing to do anything at all. And this constant competing for resources, writing grants and so forth. I guess that's, if something has made me say, oh, I'm going to call it quits, it's just this constant competing for resources. And but again, that is just how it is. And it goes back, if you're able to communicate your story, that's what's going to give you a chance. Are you a good communicator? What is the urgency? Can you communicate that? And so.
Lots of challenges, but the thing that's occupying a high percentage of my time right now and for the past several months has been retaining and attracting resources, retaining and attracting staff. How do we make sure that the people that we have, we keep? How do we position ourselves as a company to attract the best and the brightest? And then how do we because we're growing and we're hiring a lot of people, how do we integrate that, share our culture, and then provide the right training and make sure the quality of our work remains very high? That's it.
At this time, we'd like to open up questions to the floor. So if anyone has questions, yeah, feel free to ask. Should I walk around with the mic? So yeah, anyone have a question?
Hi, thank you for your insight today. I am kind of interested in what kinds of roles recent graduates, especially PhDs, get in your organizations, and if you have any insight on how you applied specific skills you learned in graduate school to your industry job. A lot of advice I'm kind of seeing as I'm approaching the job market says, recent PhDs entering industry just kind of have to accept that they'll only be getting an entry-level position. So I'm kind of wondering if you can talk about that a little.
I can talk about that at length. Yeah, so I mean, when I applied for a job, I applied for a mid-level job, and they were like, "No, you're an entry level," and that's that is how we see people. But we typically hire PhDs into different types of roles. We don't necessarily list a different role, but for example, I would love to hire an entry-level environmental engineering PhD who's really bright, because we're really limited in that type of work right now. In terms of advancing and developing in a consulting firm like mine, it varies a lot by firm. So my water wastewater group is about 20 people, and we've got about 5 PhDs, which is, I think, a lot higher of a proportion than other firms I know of. Though a lot of firms are, getting more into that because more people are getting their PhDs. But the people with their PhDs are often doing different types of work. They're doing more exploratory work. They're doing more conceptual kind of big picture type of thinking work, or very detailed in a specific area of study. I would say that the material that I worked on in my PhD, I don't use it at all at my work. The benefit of the PhD for me was mostly figuring out how to deal with ambiguity, mentor other people, and communicate results in an effective way.
Well said.
So we definitely don't have a lot of PhDs at my company, but when we have had them, the skills that I've seen them use and have worked with them tend to be things like more advanced knowledge of methodology in transportation modeling that can be really helpful. That was definitely not something that I learned as an undergraduate student. So there's certainly space for people with advanced degrees. And definitely the communication piece and having a real vision for the landscape of the field and understanding where we can push boundaries or different practice areas that folks with higher degrees could bring to the company.
We hire PhD level staff and all the way master's and bachelor's degree staff. But coming in right out of the degree, you're not at a different level than an entry level engineer. You are definitely, though, assigned or expected to understand and be able to work on different kinds of problems. So the issue about being an entry level with a PhD, I can't think it's more on the framing. The truth is, you're not going to come out of university and be in a management role or there's so much learning that happens after you graduate to be of value to whatever kind of industry or firm that you're in, and that takes some time. But definitely for our firm, the types of problems you get assigned to are different based on the individual skill set, and that really. It doesn't really have to do with it goes beyond degree also. Skill set is skill set. Some people are more talented or more adept at certain areas, and we try to match that skill set with the problems.
Any other questions from the audience?
Hello, thank you guys for coming to the career panel. One of the common questions that professors and job interviewers will ask you is, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years? So my question is, when you got out of college, where did you see yourself in 10-15 years, and how much has that changed compared to now?
Thank you. I guess, again, I feel fortunate. I had seen myself, I did my master's first. I did my master's on, I was into genetics. I thought I was going to discover why wild rice in northern Minnesota was growing differently from lake to lake. And when I was doing that, I realized that water level, the way we manage water level on our lakes, had like many more times impact on the growth of the rice than the genetic variations. So I thought, oh, then water management is where it is, and that's where I went into. I guess maybe I was lucky. I always felt it was in the right place, I guess. Not much help there, so maybe you can.
Well, I have not been in my career for 10 years, but I will say that as an undergraduate student, I was really struggling with this, and that was part of what got me to go to graduate school, which I don't know is the best advice. But I was able to get a more clear picture of what it was that I wanted to do during my graduate studies. So I'm really thankful for that. I think when I left graduate school, I knew that I was going to have a hard time finding a role that really matched what I wanted to do. And so it took a few years to really, well, shape the role that I was in into what it was that I wanted to do. So it's kind of been a figure it out as you go process. But now, a few years out, I really see myself, in the future managing a technical team. I say that my skill set is well positioned to be the person that communicates the really technical information to a less technical audience, and that's where I can add value. And so I want to keep diving into that in my career.
Since I got this for a moment, I guess I just want to add it to it. I listen, Mike is what it was as you were speaking, it made me think. I guess I never saw myself not working in water. Just growing up, having spent time with my grandparents on the farm and everything, it was just like I was just fortunate that I was able to do what I had hoped to do. So.
I would say that I'm in a pretty different place than where I envisioned after I finished my PhD. I'm a big microbe nerd. I think microbes are like the coolest thing in the world, and I don't get to do very much work with microbes. I kind of thought I was going to be doing smart stuff on my computer most of the time and maybe working with others some of the time. But as I mentioned, I spent a ton of time mentoring other staff. I spent a lot of time building consensus within my organization to move different internal priorities forward, to move forward, different external priorities. It's a pretty amazing day when I can sit down and spend 2 hours uninterrupted at my computer to work on something technical these days. And that, I think, has been a surprise to me. Not necessarily an unpleasant surprise, but definitely different.
Well, I guess I was fortunate because I came out of grad school and I was able to find a firm that I thought was going to meet my needs from a challenging work aspect and the way that they approached projects, the way they approached people inside, the way they approached people outside, and I also knew that I wanted to, because I have an interest in business, so I love the idea of mixing business, the business of engineering, the consulting, private sector consulting. And I was fortunate. I connected with a firm that I thought I aligned with, and I did, and I've stayed with them for 32 years, and so I was lucky. So that turned out for me.
Anyone else have a question?
Thanks. It's great to have you all here and see many of you again. One thing that I've noticed with some more recent grads over the years is there is a lot more movement from company to company and networking. And I don't know if that's partly because it's a way to advance going to a different company, or maybe can you comment on what you see? Because you've all been with your organizations for quite some time, and do you think is that like 20% of the people, or have times changed? And maybe can you talk about what the young people here should be thinking about? Because sometimes the grass might look greener, and maybe it isn't too. So just what your advice might be on that.
I'll start because I've got the microphone. I've been fortunate. One of the things that I'm actually really proud about in my career is the number of people that I worked with early in my career that left the company and have come back to the company. There's right now, I work with 3 individuals, and over the years it's been bigger numbers that worked with the firm, left, and decided to come back, and that's a great. I'm really proud of that for whatever small part in now that I have in helping shape the organization, what it's like to, the work environment. But it is absolutely true that I've witnessed that idea, that concept is completely changing over the years. So the number of people that would, if you ask them now that are coming into the organization, do you plan on staying, 10 years or your whole career? It's probably a very small percentage do that. And we have people that have left and, after 5 years, and we were really sorry to see them go. But it's just I think it's a cultural thing of people wanting different experiences too. We try hard to make it to be able to match that what individuals' career and personal goals are with what we can offer. And sometimes we align, and sometimes we don't. And if we don't, then it is a good idea for people to move on.
And I would emphasize the importance of company culture again here. We have lost a number of junior, entry-level and mid-level staff in recent years, and many of them came from other companies and then left for other companies. In my group, all of the mid-levels that are kind of at my level between 5 and 15 years of experience, all of us started at Barr Engineering and have been there for our entire career. There's a lot of senior levels who have come from other places, but I don't know why people have been leaving, but I think there's something to different work cultures fitting different people. So at my company, we give you a lot of flexibility, reduced base. You can kind of work when and where you want as long as you get stuff done. But there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that too, in terms of managing your workload, in terms of making sure you're getting stuff done. And a lot of the projects we work on are very challenging projects. And so I think finding a company that does the type of work that you're interested in doing and has a sort of company culture that you're interested in is really key to if you want to stay somewhere for a long time and be happy there.
Right. I think it's a very accurate description of the market today. I think on both sides, the employers, it's great to hear that there are employers that offer so many benefits. On the same time, I think employers also see employees as transient, just come and go. And also the folks who work, the employees, they're looking for different opportunities. So that is definitely the case. That it's just a fact, I guess.
I would say that of friends of mine, since I'm like 3 or 4 years out, those that have moved, it's generally been they were working either a lot more than they wanted to be, and so they were looking for that different company culture, or sometimes it has to do with like the number of different responsibilities they have. I feel really lucky that the group that I'm in at my company has extremely low turnover, but in the last 3 years that I've been there, the one person who has left went to a public sector role, and I think that that's largely because he was really interested in doing the work but not trying to like win it or do like kind of the business side of it. So again, that was kind of a cultural thing, but really, I think the workload has been a major contributor to a lot of my friends moving roles.
Is there any other questions from the audience? Yeah, if not, that wraps up our panel. Thank you so much to our panelists for coming and sharing your experiences, and thank you all for coming. We will have some more treats for you guys. I'll bring those out, and then we'll have a little reception so you can come and speak with the panelists and connect with them a little bit more. But thank you all for coming. Yeah.